Madhvi ready kada?
I'm ready.
Adi madam the system stuck అయిపోయింది Madhvi.
Madam, live, we are on live.
Madhvi screen sharing ఒక్కసారి స్టాప్ చేయి Madhvi.
Good morning, Sridevi madam, Manjari madam, and Madhavi madam.
Good morning, ma'am.
Madam, please start.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to all the students for the TSMS webinar sessions. And myself, Mrs. Sridevi Polu, Principal, TSMS Pudur, Vikarabad, is here to start the third lesson in chemical bonding by our PGT, Mrs. Madhavi. Madam is here to explain you the third lesson in chemical bonding, children. So in our previous classes, we have dealt about the ionic bond and the covalent bond, right? So today, Madam is here to explain you the bond parameters like bond length, bond angle, bond energy. Okay, so please try to write down the notes, children, and then every day you follow our classes. Try to subscribe our YouTube channel. It benefits you a lot for your examinations and also to enhance your knowledge. So thank you. Good morning, Madhvi ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning.
So
Thank
once
you,
again,
ma'am.
welcome you for the webinar. So today we are going to discuss about all these, which topics, ma'am?
Ma'am, bond parameters and then limitations of octet rule, ma'am.
Okay.
So next, polarity of the bonds.
Okay, children. So in our previous class, we have learned about the octet rule, isn't it? So every atom tries to attain 8 electrons in its valency shell, either by losing electrons or by gaining electrons or by sharing electrons. So in our first lesson, we have we discussed that chemical bonding involves regarding the types of bonds. So how the bonds are formed. Please remember, only the unpaired electrons used to participate in the bond formation. It's not the lone pair electrons, right? So ionic bond, covalent bond, and then coming to the next types, Madam will discuss about that. Thank you, Madhvi ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. So let us Good morning, everyone. So welcome back to third session on chemical bonding and molecular structure. So let us have a quick review. Quick review on previous session. So in the previous session, we have discussed about covalent bond. So what is covalent bond? The bond which is formed due to the sharing of electrons. Okay. So what is covalent bond? The bond which is formed due to the sharing of electrons, right? So during sharing, those atoms attains a stable configuration. What is the stable configuration? They get 8 electrons in their outer shell. So which elements are having 8 electrons in the outer shell? Noble gas elements are having 8 electrons in their outer shell, right, children? So what are noble gases? 18 group elements are noble gases. So these things we have discussed in the previous class. Next, Lewis structure of simple molecules. So we have seen some molecules like hydrogen, oxygen, fluorine, chlorine, and then nitrogen, water molecules, ammonia molecules. So we have drawn Lewis dot structure for these simple molecules, and we have seen some steps to write the Lewis structure, is it not? Okay, next, after that we have discussed formal charges. So what is a formal charge? So it is the charge present in an atom present in a molecule. So we have considered ozone molecule. So we have calculated formal charge on each oxygen. Ozone molecule consists of 3 oxygens, is it not? So on each oxygen we have calculated formal charge. So these are the subtopics we have discussed in a last session. So now let us see what are the topics that we are going to discuss today's session. Octet rule and its limitations, ionic or electrovalent bond, differences between ionic and covalent compounds, bond parameters. So in that we are going to discuss bond length, bond angle, bond enthalpy, bond order, resonance structures. So these are the bond parameters we are going to discuss in today's session. Next, polarity of the bonds also we'll discuss, and Fazan rules. So these are the subtopics we are going to cover today. So let us start the session. So before going to the limitations of octet rule, children, I want to revise again what is octet rule. So what is octet rule? So every atom prefer to have 8 electrons in their outermost orbit by losing, gaining or sharing electrons in order to have an octet in their valence shell. So what is octet? 8 electrons in their valence shell. How atoms get stability? Either by losing or gaining or sharing. So in which case losing and gaining of electrons takes place? In ionic compounds. In ionic compounds, losing or gaining, the atoms attains stability. Means they get 8 electrons in their outer shell. So whereas in case of covalent compounds, by sharing atoms, by sharing of electrons, atoms get stability. Okay, what is the stable electronic configuration? NS2 NP6 electronic configuration. So which elements are having stable electronic configuration? Noble gases are having. What are noble gases? 18 group elements are noble gases. Okay, so this we have discussed from the last 2 sessions, octet rule. Now let us see the limitations of octet rule. Okay, so now what is the first limitation? Incomplete octet of the central atom. Okay, incomplete octet. Octet means 8 electrons, is it not? But some atoms in some molecules, they are not having 8 electrons around them. Okay, so for example, lithium chloride, beryllium chloride and boron trichloride. These compounds, if you observe these compounds, so this is the Lewis structure of lithium chloride. If you see the Lewis structure of lithium chloride, around the lithium only one pair of electrons are present, means only one single bond, one pair means 2 electrons only present. Lithium is the central atom. So around this lithium, only one pair of electrons are present. So it means it is an incomplete of octet, is it not? Okay, octet means the central atom, it should consist of 8 electrons around it, is it not? But lithium, around it only one pair of electrons are present, whereas in case of beryllium chloride, see this is the Lewis dot structure of beryllium chloride. So around the beryllium chloride, only 2 pair of electrons, 2 pair means 2 2s are 4 electrons, only 4 electrons are present around the beryllium. So for this is also around this also 8 electrons are not complete, so it is an incomplete octet, is it not? So let us consider boron trichloride. In case of boron trichloride, so it forms 3 bonds with 3 chlorines. It means 3 pair of electrons, means 6 electrons are present around the boron. So here also 8 electrons are not present around the central atom. Only 6 electrons are present around the central atom. So in lithium chloride, in beryllium chloride, in boron trichloride, incomplete octet of central atom. So here lithium only 1 pair, and in case of beryllium only 2 pairs, and in case of boron only 3 pairs. So 8 electrons are not present around these atoms in these molecules. So these molecules exist in nature and they are stable. So but octet rule, it couldn't explain the stability of these molecules, though the octet is not complete around the central atom, but these molecules exist in nature and they are stable. So this is the first limitation of octet rule. Next, coming to the second limitation of octet rule, children, odd electron molecules. So octet means even number, is it not? But in some molecules around the central atom, odd number of electrons will be present. For example, nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide, NO2, nitric oxide NO and NO2. So these are the Lewis dot structures for nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide. So now let us consider nitric oxide. If you see in nitric oxide, nitrogen is the central atom. It forms double bond with this oxygen. Double bond means how many electron? Each bond means one pair. Two bonds means two pairs. Two pair means two twos are 4 electrons. 4, and it is having one lone pair, that is 4 plus 2. 6 plus 1, so this is 1 electron. So total 7 electrons are present around this nitrogen. 7 is an odd number, is it not? So octet is not completed, so odd number of electrons are present around the central atom in case of nitric oxide. Now let us see nitrogen dioxide. In case of nitrogen dioxide also, nitrogen is the central atom, so it is forming double bond with this oxygen and single bond with this oxygen. So total how many bonds are there? 3 bonds are there. So each bond one pair. 3 twos are 6 electrons. 6 plus 1, 7. So total 7 electrons present around the nitrogen. So it means odd number of electrons. Octet is not completed. So this is also not explained by octet rule. Okay. So this nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide exist in nature and they are stable, but octet rule couldn't explain the stability of these molecules, right? Okay. So this is about the second drawback of octet rule. Now coming to the third drawback of octet rule. So expanded octet, the expanded octet. So in some molecules like phosphorus pentafluoride and sulfur hexafluoride and sulfuric acid and some coordination compounds, in those compounds the central atom is having more than 8 electrons. So around the central atom more than 8 electrons will be present. So now let us see the phosphorus pentafluoride. In phosphorus pentafluoride, phosphorus is the central atom. So phosphorus, around the phosphorus, how many bonds are present? Total 5 bonds are present. Each bond means one pair of electrons. So 5 twos are 10 electrons. So around the phosphorus 10 electrons are present. Is it an expanded of octet? 8. Is it a more than 8? So in phosphorus pentafluoride, so this around the central atom more than 8 electrons are present. It means 10 electrons are present around the central atom in case of phosphorus pentafluoride. Now let us see in case of sulfur hexafluoride, SF6, sulfur hexafluoride. In case of sulfur hexafluoride, sulfur is the central atom. Around the central atom, how many bonds are there? So total 6 bonds are there. Each bond means one pair of electron. 6 into 2, 12. So 12 electrons around the sulfur. How many electrons are there? 6 twos are 12 electrons are present around the sulfur. So it means it is more than 8 electrons, right children? So the expanded octet in case of sulfur hexafluoride. So in case of sulfuric acid, H2SO4, sulfur is the central atom. Around the central atom, how many bonds are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 bonds are there. Each bond means one pair of electron. 6 into 2, 12. So around the sulfur, 12 electrons are present. So it means it is more than 8. So these molecules, phosphorus pentafluoride and sulfur hexafluoride and sulfuric acid, all these molecules exist in nature and they are stable. But the central atom is having more than 8 electrons around it. So so this could not be explained by octet rule. So this is the third drawback of octet rule. Is it clear, children? So till now we have discussed 3 drawbacks. So what are the 3 drawbacks? The incomplete octet of the central atom, and next one is odd electron molecules. Next one, the expanded octet. Now let us see some more drawbacks of octet rule. So octet rule is based upon the chemical inertness of noble gases. Children, we know that. So octet rule, it based on the inertness of the noble gases, because noble gases are having 8 electrons in their outer shell. So that's why they are not combining and they are inert. So the octet rule is based on the inertness of noble gases, but some noble gases like xenon and krypton, they can able to combine with oxygen and fluorine at certain conditions, and they can able to form compounds like xenon difluoride, krypton difluoride, xenon oxyfluoride, xenon tetrafluoride, xenon hexafluoride, like that different number of compounds they can able to form. Xenon and krypton, though they are noble gases, though they are inert gases, but under certain conditions, they can able to combine with oxygen and fluorine. They can able to form number of compounds like xenon difluoride, krypton difluoride, and xenon oxyfluoride. Such type of compounds they can able to form. But octet rule is, it depends upon the inertness of the noble gases, but these noble gases like xenon and krypton, they are also combining and they are forming compounds. So this is the other drawback of octet rule. Okay, now coming to the another drawback. So this theory does not account for the shape of the molecules. So we know that, children, some molecules like methane, it is having a tetrahedral structure, and ammonia, it is having pyramidal structure, and water molecule, it is having bent structure, and beryllium chloride, it is having linear structure. Like that, different molecules are having a different structure, different shape they are having, but this theory couldn't explain the shape of different molecules. Okay, so next, another drawback of Lewis octet rule, that is this octet rule, it couldn't explain the stability of the molecules. So here we have seen in case of beryllium chloride, boron trifluoride, sulfuric acid, all these are stable only, but it couldn't explain the stability of the molecules, why these molecules are stable. So this couldn't explain the stability of the molecules. Next, what is the other drawback of octet rule? It couldn't explain the energy of the molecules. Okay, so molecules are having a certain energy, so this theory is totally silent about the energy of molecules. So these are the drawbacks of octet rule, children. Okay, you just go through these. Okay, very simple. Next, coming to ionic or electrovalent bond. So already we have seen, children, what is ionic bond. Ionic bond is formed due to the transfer of electrons. So we have seen sodium chloride. In case of sodium chloride, sodium, it is having 11 electrons. So one electron in the outer shell, it will lose one electron, it will form Na plus ion. And chlorine, it is having 7 electrons in their outer shell, in its outer shell. So it gain 1 electron and it get noble gas configuration, means 8 electrons in its outer shell. So during that, chlorine will get negative charge. So in between Na plus and Cl minus, there will be strong electrostatic force of attraction. During losing and gaining, they got noble gas configuration. All these things we have discussed with children. So that the force of attraction that exists between the two oppositely charged ions is called as electrovalent bond or electrostatic force of attraction, and that bond is called as ionic or electrovalent bond. These things we have already discussed. Okay, so but children, ionic compounds in crystalline state, the constant particles. So in ionic compounds, what are the constant particles? Cations and anions. The constant particles, they arrange three-dimensional regularly in three-dimensional order. So see here, you can see here sodium chloride. This is the sodium chloride crystal lattice. So in sodium chloride crystal lattice, the constant particles are chloride ions and sodium ions. So these chloride ions and sodium ions, they regularly arranged in a three-dimensional manner. So this regular arrangement of constant particles in three-dimensional manner is called as lattice. So this is the lattice. During the formation of Formation of lattice. So children, ionic compounds in the crystalline state consists of orderly three-dimensional arrangement of cations and anions. Just now only we have seen in case of sodium chloride how this Cl minus ions and the Na plus ions are arranged. So these Cl minus and Na plus ions, these cations and anions, they held together by Coulombic interactions, that is called electrostatic interaction. So during the formation of this crystal lattice, they release some energy. Okay, for the formation of crystal lattice, they release some energy. It means the energy decreases. So once the energy decreases means they get a stability. So listen children, one thing you have to remember. So the substances which are having less energy, they are more stable when compared with the substances which are having more energy. Okay, the substances which are having less energy are more stable when compared with the substances which are having more energy. So during the formation of crystal lattice, these ionic compounds, they are losing energy, means their energy is decreasing. So by decreasing the energy, their stability increases. So see children, in ionic compound, the stability of ionic compound is provided by its enthalpy of lattice formation and not simply by achieving octet of electrons around the ionic species. So in ionic compounds, by just simply by losing and gaining, they are getting noble gas configuration. By getting octet, they are not getting stability. How they are getting stability? By formation of lattice enthalpy. Okay, by the formation of lattice enthalpy. So lattice enthalpy decreases. So because of that, they are getting stability. So these points you have to remember children. So let us see the structure of sodium chloride. So this is the arrangement of sodium chloride. So these red balls shows the Na plus ions, and these blue colored balls shows Cl minus ions. Always remember children, anions are having bigger size when compared with cations. Cations are having small size. So these small red colored ball shows Na plus ions. So in sodium chloride or rock salt, we can say it as rock salt. So in these constant particles are cations and anions. These are arranged in a regular manner. So this regular arrangement is called as a crystal lattice. So during the formation of crystal lattice, energy is released. So because of a decrease in energy, these ionic compounds, they get stability. Okay, is it clear children? So now coming to the differences between ionic and covalent compounds. Till now we have discussed about the nature of ionic compounds and covalent compounds. From last two sessions we are dealing with these compounds only children. So now let us differentiate between these ionic compounds and covalent compounds. So in ionic compounds, these are formed by the transfer of electrons. Ionic compounds are formed due to the transfer of electrons, whereas covalent compounds are formed by sharing of electrons. We have seen many examples. Okay, in case of ionic compounds, sodium chloride formation, magnesium oxide formation, and then calcium chloride formation. These things we have discussed in previous sessions, children. And covalent compounds, how they get stability by sharing of electrons. In case of hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and ammonia, water molecule, all these things we have discussed in case of covalent compounds. Okay, so in ionic compounds, these are formed by the transfer of electrons, and covalent compounds are formed by the sharing of electrons. Next, generally exist in solid form. Sodium chloride, magnesium oxide, and calcium chloride, potassium chloride, all these are solids at room temperature. So whereas in case of covalent compounds like iodine is a solid, liquid, bromine is a liquid, and gases like chlorine, hydrogen, and all these, nitrogen, oxygen, all these are gases. Means covalent compounds may be solids, liquids, or gases. Ionic compounds conduct electricity in molten state. So in liquid state, ionic compounds conduct electricity because they provide free ions. So suppose, for example, molten sodium chloride, if you consider, it will give free Na plus and free Cl minus ions. So for conductivity, we required free ions or free electrons, whereas in case of ionic compounds, they provide, in molten state, they provide free ions. So that's why ionic compounds, they conduct electricity. Whereas in case of covalent compounds, there is no free ions. There is no availability of free ions, so that's why covalent compounds, they will not conduct electricity. Okay, next difference is melting and boiling points is high because of strong force of attraction between the ions. We know that, children, in ionic compounds there is a strong electrostatic force of attraction between the oppositely charged ions. So because of the strong force of attraction, they are having a high melting and boiling points. Whereas in case of covalent compounds, these are simply formed due to the sharing of electrons only. So the covalent bond is weak when compared with this strong electrostatic force of attraction. That's why these covalent compounds are having low melting and boiling points. So these are the differences between ionic and covalent compounds. So what are the differences between ionic and covalent compounds? Again, I'm repeating. So ionic compounds are formed by the transfer of electrons. Covalent compounds are formed by the sharing of electrons. Ionic compounds exist in solid form at room temperature, whereas in case of covalent compounds, they may be solids, liquids, or gases. Ionic compounds conduct electricity in molten state because they provide free ions, whereas in case of covalent compounds, they will not conduct electricity. They are bad conductors because they are not having the free ions. Next, melting and boiling points for ionic compounds is high because they are having a strong electrostatic force of attraction, whereas in case of covalent compounds, they are having a low melting and boiling points because there is no such a strong force of attraction between the atoms. Right? Is that clear, children? So this is about the differences between ionic compounds and covalent compounds. Next, let us see the bond parameters. So bond parameters, in that first let us see the bond length. So what is bond length? So bond length is defined as the equilibrium distance between the nuclei of two bonded atoms in a molecule. So let us consider this is a molecule and it is formed due to the bonding of two atoms. So this is one atom and this is one atom. In between there is a bond. Okay, so this is a molecule. So then what is the bond length? So bond length is nothing but it is the equilibrium distance between the two nuclei. So this is the nuclei of this atom and this is the nucleus of this atom. So the distance between these two nuclei is called as bond length. Very simple, children. What is bond length? The equilibrium distance between the two nuclei of the two bonded atoms in a molecule. Okay, so now see here, up to here it is the radius of this atom, and here to here it is the radius of this atom. If you add radius of 1 and radius of 2, these two atoms, you will get bond length. Very simple. What is bond length? It is the equilibrium distance between the nuclei of two bonded atoms in a molecule. Okay, is it clear, children? So let us see some bond parameters. In that bond length we have discussed. What is the bond length? It is the equilibrium distance between the nuclei of two bonded atoms. Next one is bond angle. So next bond parameter is bond angle. So what is bond angle? So it is defined as the angle between the orbitals containing bonding electron pairs around the central atom in a molecule or complex ion. For example, if you consider in BH3, if you see, so the bond, this is the angle between these two bonding orbitals. So these orbitals are having a bond pair of electrons. So this is one bond and this is one bond, and these bonds are formed due to the overlapping of orbitals. So the angle between these two orbitals which are having bond pair of electrons is called as a bond angle. Okay, so in case of BH3, bond angle is 120 degrees. So we express the bond angle in degrees. Okay, so bond angle is expressed in degrees. Okay, so this, how can we calculate this bond angle? By using spectroscopic methods. So spectroscopy, by using spectroscopy, it is a technique. So by using that spectroscopy, we can able to measure the bond angles of different molecules. Okay. So what is bond angle? The angle between the orbitals containing bonding electron pairs around the central atom in a molecule or in a complex ion. Okay. So the angle between the orbitals containing bonding electron pairs around the central atom in a molecule or complex ion. Okay. So bond angle is expressed in degrees, and it can be measured by using the technique called spectroscopy. So this is about the another bond parameter, that is bond angle. Next, coming to another one, that is bond enthalpy. So now see what is bond enthalpy. The amount of energy required to break 1 mole of a bond of a particular type between two atoms in a gaseous state. So for example, if you consider a hydrogen molecule, there is a bond. Okay, so the amount of energy that is required to break that bond, so break that bond, is called as bond enthalpy. So what is bond enthalpy? The amount of energy that is required to break 1 mole of bonds of a particular type between two atoms in a gaseous state. So now this is a hydrogen in hydrogen molecule. It is in the gaseous state. So 1 mole of hydrogen, if you consider, so there is a single bond between these two hydrogen atoms. So the amount of energy that is required to break this 1 mole of bond is called as bond enthalpy. So for hydrogen, what is the bond enthalpy? How much energy is required to break 1 mole of bond between two hydrogen atoms? That is 435.8 kilojoules per mole. If you consider 1 mole of a hydrogen gas, so to break the bonds, 1 mole of bonds between two hydrogen atoms in gaseous state, that is 435.8 kilojoules per mole energy is required to break that bond. See children, hydrogen, 1 mole of a hydrogen gas is considered. So 1 mole of hydrogen gas, so that is, if the bond is, if you break, then you will get a hydrogen atom in gaseous state, a hydrogen atom in gaseous state. So how much energy is required? 435.8 kilojoules per mole energy is required to break the 1 mole of a bond in the case of a hydrogen. Is that clear? Like that for oxygen, it will be different. It will be more, because in between oxygen and oxygen atom there is a double bond, so more energy is required. In case of nitrogen, triple bond is present, so it required more than oxygen. So like that, the bond enthalpy, it depends upon the nature. Okay, is that clear? Is that clear children? Bond enthalpy. Now coming to the bond order. What is bond order? The number of bonds between the two atoms in a molecule. So the number of bonds between the two atoms in a molecule. For example, in case of hydrogen, there is a single bond. So that's why bond order is 1. For oxygen, there is a double bond. So that's why bond order is 2. And in case of nitrogen, triple bond is present between the two nitrogen. So that's why bond order is 3. You can see here, children. You can see here. So here they shared two hydrogen atom in a hydrogen molecule. Two hydrogen atom, they shared only one pair of electrons. So it means there is a single bond between a hydrogen atom and a hydrogen atom. So that's why bond order is 1. So what is bond order? What is the definition? Number of bonds between the atoms in a molecule is called as a bond order. So here only one single bond is present. So that's why bond order is 1 in case of a hydrogen. So in case of oxygen, 2 pair of electrons are shared. 2 pair of electrons means double bond. So there is a double bond between two oxygens. So that's why here bond order is 2. In case of nitrogen, 3 pair of electrons they were shared. So that's why a triple bond is present between two nitrogens. So the bond order is 3. So it is very easy, children. Just you have to count the number of bonds. Okay, yeah, between the two atoms in a molecule, then that will be the bond order. So we have discussed bond parameters. What are the bond parameters that we have discussed till now? Okay, bond length. So the equilibrium distance between the two nuclei of atoms, of two atoms, bonded atoms in a molecule is called as bond length. And bond angle is nothing but the angle between the two orbitals which are having bond pair of electrons around the central atom is called as bond angle. And then bond enthalpy, the amount of energy that is required to break one mole of bonds of a particular type between two atoms in a gaseous state. And then bond order, number of bonds between the two atoms in a molecule. Next, coming to next bond parameter, that is resonance structure. So what is resonance structure? So children, we have drawn Lewis dot structures for many molecules. So suppose if single Lewis dot structure cannot describe a molecule accurately, then in that case we have to consider resonance structures. Okay, so for example, in case of O3 molecule, if you consider here O3 molecule, there is a double bond between these two oxygens and a single bond between these two oxygens, but all three oxygens are same only, no? So this double bond, it may be present between these two oxygens. So the structure of O3 molecules may be this also, is it not? So that's why this double bond, it orients between these two, delocalizes between these three oxygen atoms. So that's why we are representing that double bond with this dot dot dot. See children, so this is the resonance hybrid. Okay, so and these two are called as resonance structures. So what is resonance structure? So what are resonance structures? So whenever a single Lewis structure cannot describe a molecule accurately, a number of structures with similar energy, position of nuclei, bonding and non-bonding pairs of electrons are taken as the canonical structure of a hybrid, which describes the molecule accurately. So it means that, so while writing this resonance structure, the nuclei should not be changed, and the number of bonding and non-bonding pair of electrons should not change. Okay, and thus these resonance structures are having similar energies. Okay, so now let us see one more example. See, in case of carbonate ion, CO3 2 minus. So this is the structure. So this carbonate ion is having three oxygens. Okay, so in between this carbon and oxygen, double bond is present, but all three oxygens are same only. So this double bond, it may be present between these this carbon and oxygen. This double bond may be present between this carbon and oxygen, is it not? So it means that the double bond, it delocalizes over all the three oxygens. So we will represent with this double bond dot dot on all the three oxygens, and these three structures are called as resonance structures. Next one is polarity of the bonds. So children, remember, we have seen up to now, we have seen ionic compounds and covalent compounds. So in nature, pure ionic compound, pure covalent compound does not exist. Okay, existence of 100% ionic or 100% covalent bond, it will not exist. Okay, it is an ideal situation. Okay, perfect ionic compound and perfect ionic bond and perfect covalent bond existing is ideal situation. We cannot get. It means that ionic compounds are having some covalent nature, and some covalent compounds are having some ionic nature. Okay children, so what is that? Again I'm repeating, in existing of 100% ionic or covalent bond represents an ideal situation. It means that perfect ionic compound and perfect covalent compound does not exist. It means that ionic compound is also having some covalent nature, and some covalent compound is also having some ionic nature. So in reality, no bond or a compound is either completely covalent or ionic. Suppose if it is a covalent compound, it is having a partial ionic nature. If it is an ionic compound, it is having partial covalent nature. Is it clear? So now let us see covalent compounds, how they are having partial ionic nature. Is it clear, children? Again, I'm repeating, just please concentrate. What is the polarity of the bond? So we know that ionic compounds are there and covalent compounds are there, but perfect ionic and perfect covalent compounds does not exist in nature. So even ionic compounds are also having some partial covalent nature, and the covalent compounds are also having some partial ionic nature, right? So first let us see some covalent compounds, how they are having some partial ionic character. So covalent compounds, they can be divided into two categories. One is non-polar covalent bond and polar covalent bond. In case of non-polar covalent bond, so we can see homonuclear molecules like hydrogen, oxygen, chlorine, nitrogen, chlorine, bromine, iodine. In all these cases, these molecules are formed by the same atoms, is it not? In case of hydrogen, two atoms are hydrogens only. In case of oxygen, two atoms are oxygen only. So such type of molecules are called as non-polar covalent compounds or homonuclear molecules. Okay, now coming to the polar covalent bond. So we'll concentrate more on polar covalent bond. For example, if you consider HF, so it is a heteronuclear molecule. See children, this is HF. This is HF. It is a heteronuclear molecule because it is formed due to the hydrogen and fluorine by the sharing of electrons. So there is a covalent bond between hydrogen and fluorine. So the bond pair of electrons will be present here. But if you see, fluorine is a 17 group element. 17 group element means NS2 NP5 configuration. So if they required one electron, they will get noble gas configuration, is it not? So they are highly electronegative. So 17 group elements are highly electronegative because one electron is required for their stability. So that's why they are highly electronegative elements. So in a whole periodic table, fluorine, in Pauling scale, fluorine is the highest electronegative element. Okay, so then what it will do, it will attract the bond pair of electrons towards it. So during the attraction, so it will get a partial negative charge and hydrogen will get a partial positive charge. Again, I'm repeating children, hydrogen fluoride is a heteronuclear molecule. So there is a bond pair of electrons present here because they formed due to the sharing of electrons. So we are discussing partial ionic nature of a covalent compound. So it is a covalent compound. So though it is a covalent compound, it is having partial ionic nature. Why it is having partial ionic nature? Because fluorine is a highly electronegative element in the periodic table. So it will attract the bond pair of electrons towards it. Then completely, it's not completely, just the pair of electrons little bit move towards the fluorine. So during that, fluorine will get a partial negative charge. So this is delta, minus delta children, partial negative charge. It is represented with the minus the delta, and complete positive charge means minus 1. But it is a partial one. So completely the pair of electron not completely shifted towards the fluorine, just they simply oriented towards the fluorine. That's why it will get a partial negative charge and the hydrogen will get a partial positive charge. So the shifting of electrons that can be represented with this arrow. So since the pair of electrons a little bit they are moving towards the fluorine, that's why this head portion is towards the highly electronegative element, and this tail part it represents the electropositive element. Is it clear? In this case, fluorine is electronegative. That's why this arrow is towards fluorine. Okay, and this tail part is towards hydrogen, right children? So now here during this partial charges, this molecule is called as polar molecule. polar. Once they are getting this partial charges, then this molecule is called as polar molecule, and this molecule is having a dipole moment. Dipole means two different poles. So minus this one is a minus pole and this one is a plus pole. That's why this molecule now attained dipole moment. Okay, children. So the dipole moment is represented with this vector. So this is a vector. So because it is having a direction, that's why it is a vector quantity. Dipole moment is a vector quantity, right, children? So what is dipole moment? Dipole moment is nothing but once the molecule attains polarity because of the difference in their electronegativities, though they get a partial negative charge and partial positive charge. Because of that, that molecule is attaining dipole moment. So the dipole moment is represented with this arrow. So this is a vector quantity. Now let us see what is dipole moment. So as a result of polarization, the molecule possesses the dipole moment. Okay, so it can be defined as the product of magnitude of charge and the distance between the centers of positive and negative charge. What is dipole moment, children? Dipole moment is nothing but it is the product of magnitude of the charge and the distance between the two charges. Distance between the two centers means positive center and negative charge. Okay, so it is represented with mu. So this is the Greek letter mu. Dipole moment is represented with the Greek letter mu, and dipole moment is nothing but charge into, so magnitude of the charge and into charge distance of separation. Okay, distance of separation you can see here. So charge into distance of separation. So that is called as dipole moment, and it is represented with a Greek letter mu and charge into distance of separation. Okay, so it is expressed in dB units, D. So what is the unit for dipole moment? dB units. So, it is represented with D, right, children? Okay, so now let us see the some molecules. HF, what is the dipole moment? Already we have seen fluorine is more electronegative, partial negative charge and partial positive charge. So it is having a dipole moment mu is equal to 1.82 D. What is the dipole moment for hydrogen fluoride? 1.82 D. D is nothing but dB units. So for water molecules, see here, oxygen is more electronegative. So the bond pair of electrons more shift towards oxygen. So for oxygen will get a partial negative charge and the hydrogens will get a partial positive charge. So once these partial negative charges and partial positive charges develop in the molecule, then that molecule is called as a polar molecule and it attains the dipole moment. What is the dipole moment? So 1.85 dB units in case of water. Now coming to the beryllium fluoride, so BeF2. In BeF2, if you see, children, fluorine is more electronegative, so the bond pair of electrons shift more towards the fluorine. In this case also, bond pair of electrons shift towards fluorine. So this represents the dipole moment due to this fluorine, and this vector represents the dipole moment due to this fluorine. So see, children, these two vectors, they are having the same magnitude, but they are in opposite direction. So you can see here total dipole moment. So total dipole moment is 0 in case of beryllium difluoride. BeF2 is having 0 dipole moment. Why it is having 0 dipole moment? Dipole moment due to this fluorine is this one, and dipole moment due to this fluorine is this one. These two are vectors which are having same magnitude but different direction, so opposite direction. So that's why what happens, so each vector cancels with each other. So then what happens, so the dipole moment of BeF2 is 0. Okay, next coming to the boron trifluoride. In case of boron trifluoride also, the net dipole moment is 0, children. Why the net dipole moment? Though the angle between BF here is 120 degrees, they oriented at an angle of 120 degrees, though, but in case of B, here these are linear, so that's why this one is cancelled by this one. But in case of BF3 also, the net dipole moment is 0 because here, so dipole moment of these two, the resultant dipole moment of these two, this one is the resultant dipole moment of these two dipole moments, which is in opposite direction to the dipole moment of the third. Okay, here 3 fluorines are there. 3 fluorines are highly electronegative. So then what happens? So they form some dipole moment. So this dipole moment, the resultant of these two dipole moments is in this direction. So this one will cancel with the dipole moment of the third one. Okay, similarly, the dipole moment of these two cancel with the third one. Like that, the resultant will be 0. Okay, is it clear, children? What is that? The resultant of two dipole moments is opposite to direction of the resultant dipole moment of the third. Okay, so it, in tetraatomic molecules BF3, the dipole moment is 0, although BF bonds are oriented at an angle of 120 degrees to one another. So the 3 bond moments give a net sum of 0, as the resultant of any 2 is equal to and opposite to the third. So the resultant of these two is this one, so which is opposite to that for third dipole moment. So that's why they cancel each other, and the resultant is 0 for BF3. Next, coming to the NH3 and NF3, children. So ammonia, and in case of ammonia and in case of nitrogen trifluoride, if you see, these are the Lewis dot structures. So these are having one lone pair of electrons on this central atom. Nitrogen is the central atom. So children, if you see the values of dipole moments of NH3 and NF3, so you know that fluorine is more electronegative when compared with the hydrogen, is it not? So then NF3, but if you observe the dipole moment of NF3, which is less than that of NH3, is it not? So see here, though fluorine is more electronegative when compared with the hydrogen in NH3, but the dipole moment of NF3 is less than that of NH3. See the value, 4.90 into 10 to the power of minus 30 coulomb meter for NH3, and for NF3 is 0.8 into 10 to the power of minus 30 coulomb meter for NF3. So NF3 is having less dipole moment when compared with NH3. So let us see why it is like that. So in case of NH3, nitrogen is having a more electronegative. So that's why the bond pair of electrons shift towards nitrogen. See children, these three are the dipole moments, because they are showing towards nitrogen, because nitrogen is more electronegative when compared with hydrogen. So that's why these three are towards nitrogen. So these three vectors, they are having a resultant dipole moment. So the resultant dipole moment is in this direction. See children, so this arrow shows the resultant dipole moment of these three vectors. Okay, so this is the resultant dipole moment. Now see this one, what is this? This is the dipole moment due to lone pair of electron. Here nitrogen is having lone pair of electrons, is it not? So this is the dipole moment due to these lone pair of electrons. So we call it as a orbital dipole moment. We call this as a orbital dipole moment. Now you have two children. So orbital dipole moment, this is the orbital dipole moment, and this is the resultant dipole moment. Orbital dipole moment and resultant dipole moment both are in the same direction. So the vectors which are having same direction, they add, okay, they add together. That's why NH3 is having more dipole moment. Again, I'm repeating children. In NH3, nitrogen is more electronegative when compared with the hydrogen. So the bond pair of electrons attract towards nitrogen. So the resultant of these three vectors is represented by this arrow. So, and this is the dipole moment due to the lone pair of electrons. So because of the lone pair of electrons, what happens? This is in this direction. These two vectors are in the same direction. So that's why vectors which are having same direction, they add together. So that's why in case of NH3, dipole moment is more. Whereas in case of NF3, if you see here, fluorine is more electronegative when compared with the nitrogen. So that's why the bond pair of electrons shift more towards fluorine. Okay, all these three bonds, they have shifted towards fluorine. So the resultant dipole moment is in opposite direction, in downward direction. And this one is the orbital dipole moment due to this lone pair of electron. So children, here what happened? So the resultant dipole moment and the orbital dipole moment both are in opposite direction. So the vectors which are having in a opposite direction, but the magnitude are different. Suppose if the magnitude is same, then what happens? The resultant dipole moment will be 0. But here some resultant dipole moment will be there, that is 0.8 into 10 to the power of minus 30 coulomb meter. Only one thing you have to remember, in case of ammonia, the orbital dipole moment and the resultant dipole moment both are in the same direction. Whereas in case of NF3, the orbital dipole moment and the resultant dipole moment are in opposite direction. That's why NF3 is having less dipole moment. That's all. These points, if you remember, that is sufficient, children. Okay. Now coming to the, till now what we have seen? So we have seen partial ionic nature of covalent compounds. Okay. Now we will see partial covalent nature of ionic compounds. Okay, children, till now what we have discussed in covalent compounds, how they are having partially ionic nature. Now what we will discuss? We will discuss in ionic compounds how they are having partial covalent nature. So children, don't get confused. So in ionic compounds, how they are having partial covalent character. So this was explained by Faison. So he has given some rules. So if you consider these rules, you can easily identify which compound is having, which ionic compound is having more covalent nature. So the first rule, see, let us see, children. First rule, the smaller the size of the cation and larger the size of anion, the greater the covalent character of ionic bond. Okay, what is that? Smaller the size of the cation. So first sentence, what smaller the size of the cation. So for that, we'll take one example. Okay, what is the example? Let us consider lithium chloride and cesium chloride. In that, what is the cation? Lithium is the cation, and in cesium chloride, cesium is the cation. So out of lithium and cesium, which one is having the smaller size? Lithium is having smaller size. According to Faison, so smaller the size of the cation, more will be the covalent character. So in lithium chloride, lithium is having small size when compared with the cesium. So that's why lithium is having more covalent character when compared with the cesium chloride. Is that clear, children? So by this example, you can easily remember this rule. So Faison rules are important, children. Just you concentrate here. What is that? Smaller the size of the cation, greater will be the covalent character. So for example, lithium chloride and cesium chloride. So lithium is the cation in this case and cesium is the cation in this case. Lithium is having small size when compared with the cesium. That's why lithium chloride is having more covalent character when compared with the cesium chloride. Now coming to next point, that is the next one, that is larger the size of the anion, more will be the covalent character. Larger the size of the anion, more will be the covalent character. So in case of sodium fluoride and sodium iodide, so fluorine is the anion and iodine is the anion, is it not? So fluorine, when compared with fluorine and iodine, iodine is having large size. So for cations, it should consist of a small size to show covalent character. And in case of anion, bigger the size of the anion, then more will be the covalent character. So in case of sodium iodide, iodine is having a bigger the size of anion. So that's why in case of sodium iodide, covalent character is more when compared with sodium fluoride. Again, I'm repeating, children. In sodium fluoride and sodium iodide, iodine is having a larger size when compared with the fluorine. So that's why what happens, sodium iodide is having more covalent character. So this is about Faison's first rule. Next, coming to Fason's second rule, greater the charge on the cation, the greater the covalent character of the ionic bond. So children, aluminum chloride and sodium chloride, both are ionic compounds only, but these are having partial covalent nature. So which is having more covalent nature? Though they are ionic, but they are having partial covalent nature. But according to Fason rule, second rule, greater the charge on the cation. If you see here, aluminum is the cation in case of aluminum trichloride, and the sodium is the cation in case of NaCl. So see children, aluminum is having +3 of charge and sodium is having +1. So greater the charge on the cation. So which cation is having greater charge? Aluminum is having greater charge. Is it not? +3. So that's why aluminum trichloride AlCl3 is having more covalent character when compared with the sodium chloride. Is it clear? So first point is bigger the anion size, more covalent nature, smaller the cation size, more covalent nature, and more the charge on cation, more will be the covalent character. So these 3 points till now we have discussed. Now coming to the another point, that is the for the cations of the same size and charge, the one with electronic configuration N-1d and NS0, typical for transition metals, is more polarizing than the one with a noble gas configuration. So typical of alkali and alkaline earth cations. So children, we know that even first group and second group elements, alkali and alkaline earth metals are metals, and we have they form cations, and we have d block elements. D block elements are also called as the transition metals, except last group elements. So these are also metals. So we have two types of metals. So alkaline earth metals, alkali metals, and transition metals. So the cation of this configuration, means transition metal configuration, they are having more polarizing capacity. For example, see here, silver chloride and sodium chloride. Sodium chloride, in case of sodium chloride, sodium is from alkali metal, and silver is from transition metal. Is it not? So silver is transition metal and sodium is alkali metal. So this is having N-1d and NS0 type of configuration, whereas in case of sodium is alkali metal. So because of that, when compared with AgCl and NaCl, though here charges are same and sizes are also nearly same, but what happened here, AgCl is having more covalent character when compared with NaCl. Why? Because in case of AgCl, Ag cation, Ag plus is from transition elements. Okay, is it clear, children? So this is the third point, that is the last point in Fason's rule. So by like that, if you follow these rules, we can able to identify which ionic compound is having more covalent character. So these things we have discussed till now. Now let us have a look what we have discussed in today's session, the octet rule and its limitations. So in that limitations, we have seen expanded octet and odd number of octet, and less octet, some beryllium chloride, lithium chloride, and boron trifluoride, they are not having given 8 electrons around the central atom. So it considered, this octet rule considered the inertness of noble gases, but still some noble gases like xenon and krypton, they are also combining with oxygen and fluorine, they are forming different compounds, right? So this octet rule, it couldn't explain the stability and energy of the molecules and shape of the molecules. So these are the limitations of octet rule. So now we have seen ionic or electrovalent bond. In that, lattice enthalpy plays an important role. So because of the formation enthalpy, so what happened, these ionic or electrovalent compounds, they are getting stability, not by just simply getting 8 electrons in their outer shell, right? Differences between ionic and covalent compounds also we have seen. Okay, so now bond parameters, what is the bond length, the equilibrium distance between the two nuclei of atoms, two bonded atoms in a molecule is called as bond length. Next, bond angle, the angle between the two orbitals which are having bond pair of electrons is called as bond angle. Next, bond enthalpy, the amount of energy that is required to break 1 mole of bonds of particular type is called as bond enthalpy. So that is represented in kilojoules per mole. Next, bond order, number of bonds between the two atoms in a molecule is called as bond order. Hydrogen bond order is 1, oxygen bond order is 2, nitrogen bond order is 3, because triple bond is present between two nitrogen atoms in a nitrogen molecule. Resonance structures also we have seen in case of O3 and carbonate ion CO3 2 minus resonance structures we have seen, children. Next, polarity of the bonds also we have seen, means covalent compounds are not completely covalent in nature. They are having some partial ionic nature, and ionic compounds are not completely ionic nature. They are having some partial covalent nature. So in that Fazan's rules also we have seen. So this is about today's class, children. So we'll continue in the next session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving this opportunity, ma'am.
Thank you, Madhvi ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
It was a very clear session today we had. So you have clearly explained about the Fazan's rules. And dear children, here I want to mention you one thing. See, the questions which will appear in your IPE examination from chemical bonding are, see, what is ionic bond and what are the factors favorable for the formation of cation and anion. All right. And then coming to the next one, see what is a covalent bond, and they'll give you some examples, and you have to explain the types of covalent bond in both the homoatomic molecules and heteroatomic molecules. And the next question is, today ma'am discussed you regarding the dipole moment and the resonating structures and the Fazan's rules. So Fazan's rules are very important for you when in the view of your IPE exams. And then resonance. See, what is resonance? Resonance is a phenomenon in which one or more structures can be written for a single compound. So you remember the example of benzene always for resonance. Okay. So thank you, Madhvi ma'am. So
Thank
tomorrow we are going to meet again. Tomorrow you are going to deal with session, ma'am. Which topic?
Valence bond theory, ma'am.
Valence
Valence electron pair repulsion theory.
Yeah. So tomorrow ma'am is going to discuss you regarding the valence shell electron pair repulsion theory, children. So please write down the notes from the PPTs which ma'am has shared you. See, really, we are all taking a lot of efforts to make this webinar a successful one, children. So it will take a lot of time to prepare this PPTs and all. So please follow our YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you, Madhvi ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.